Darkness draped itself over the row of suburban houses like a heavy blanket, while an unnatural hush pressed against windows and doors. Normally, a Thursday night on this block would be filled with the humming of air conditioners, the distant laugh of children playing late, and the gentle flicker of porch lights. But tonight, those benign sounds were entirely absent. Instead, the residents remained inside, hearts pounding, eyes peering through curtains at empty streets. They waited and listened, though for what they could not precisely say. Every neighbor felt a bizarre, ever-growing sense of dread, as though the air itself had curdled into a malevolent force. The object that had appeared just 3 days ago was the undeniable culprit. Everyone sensed it, though no one admitted it out loud. Something foreign had settled among them, and it was poisoning their thoughts. One whisper at a time, the object landed in the middle of the street with surprising subtlety. Marcia Beaumont, who often perched in her bay window reading, was the first to see it. She had glanced up from her book to notice a faint glow illuminating her block. At first she suspected it was a busted street light flickering in and out, but then she saw something descend slowly, carefully, like a bubble floating in a dream. It was too dark and too strange to be any piece of metal or trash riding the wind. A pulsing greenish sphere no bigger than a beach ball touched down silently on the asphalt. Marcia jumped to her feet, her book tumbling to the floor. By the time she rushed to the door, she found only a small depression in the road, as though some weight had pressed down and vanished. But the green glow lingered in the atmosphere, clinging to her eyes long after she blinked. Others saw the eerie glow too. Manny from across the street stuck his head outside, brandishing a flashlight and a baseball bat, convinced it was neighborhood kids playing a prank. Connie, 2 doors down, screamed for her husband when a flash of light ricocheted off her bedroom wall. Even Dr. Fine, the local retired psychologist, witnessed it from his garage. He'd been outside smoking a late-night cigar when he noticed a bouquet of greenish sparks dancing across the pavement. One by one they emerged from their homes that night, each wearing the same perplexed expression, yet none of them discovered the sphere or any sign of it. By morning everyone decided to keep quiet, each suspecting they'd merely fallen victim to confusing illusions of the dark. But everyone on the block began to feel different, subtle at first. A faster heartbeat upon waking, restlessness during daily routines, a gnawing worry that jammed in the throat for no definable reason. Stray, disconcerting thoughts invaded once calm minds. Paranoia, almost imperceptible, slipped under the door like a cold draft. Manny no longer marched about with that carefree swagger he was known for. His eyes twitched whenever a car passed. Connie developed a fear of walking to her mailbox alone, convinced someone was watching from across the street. Marcia found herself glancing repeatedly over her shoulder, feeling certain a silent presence hovered at her back. And Dr. Fine, whose profession had taught him the ins and outs of the mind's darker corners, attempted to rationalize the creeping sense of unease, until one night even he began to wake to shadows that dissolved when he flicked on the lights. By the second day, petty disagreements erupted around the neighborhood with disturbing frequency. The Johnsons insisted the Garcias purposefully took more than their share of parking space. Manny started yelling at a passing jogger who didn't exist. Connie accused her best friend Lucy of stealing mail from her mailbox. The tension ratcheted up with no single flashpoint. Instead, it built like an inaudible hum, intensifying each moment until even the quietest breeze sounded like a warning. People began to lock their windows in the daytime. Children who once skateboarded or rode bikes on the sidewalk were kept indoors. A pregnant hush replaced the usual neighborly chit-chat or friendly waves from driveway to driveway. No one knew precisely what was wrong, they only recognized that something was deeply off. Individuals who previously enjoyed close relationships with potlucks and community barbecues suddenly distrusted each other at every turn. Whatever had landed in the street that night had burrowed itself into the block's collective psyche. On the morning of the third day, Manny was found in his garage, pacing frantically, phone in hand, calling the police. He claimed aliens were across the street and that they were controlling his neighbor's mind. The police arrived with silent skepticism. After a quick peek around, they shrugged it off as a false alarm. But Manny refused to let it rest. His eyes darted everywhere, and he trembled as he tried to describe swirling lights that only he could see. Inside his house, curtains were drawn tight and every lamp was off, as though even the mild sunlight outside was thick with menace. Before they left, the police gently suggested Manny take some rest. They promised to drive by later. Yet Manny's eyes told them he would not sleep anytime soon. Dr. Fine fielded a handful of phone calls from neighbors on that same day, each one a strange iteration of the next. Unexplained sounds in attics, flickering lights, saboteurs lurking in the yard. Old Miss Carter insisted she saw a dead bird on her front lawn that vanished when she went to dispose of it. Connie claimed she had a near collision with an invisible figure on her staircase. Each story hinted at a form of hysteria spreading faster than seasonal flu. The psychologist and Dr. Fine recognized the classic signs of collective delusion, but his instincts also told him something else was at play, something more sinister, something from outside. The lump of dread in his own gut was impossible to deny. No matter how hard he tried to use logic, he could not unravel the anxiety that nipped at his nerves. Sometimes, while combing through the stories in his study, he experienced fleeting headaches accompanied by a throbbing, greenish afterimage in his peripheral vision. On the afternoon of the third day, the tension reached a boiling point. Connie, who had become increasingly erratic, swept through the neighborhood with tear-streaked cheeks, shouting that Manny had threatened her. She claimed he'd waved a small handgun, shouting that she was conspiring against him with the others. Panicked by her story, a few neighbors rushed to Manny's house to confront him, only for Manny to flee out his back door, babbling about a cosmic infiltration inside Connie's head. By then, even the more level-headed individuals, like Mr. Rhodes next door, were frightened. In broad daylight, shutters were slammed shut, doors locked, phones rang non-stop with frantic calls. The street itself seemed to darken under an invisible cloud, as though the sun had decided to shy away. Marcia, the quiet observer, noticed shadows dancing against her blinds that afternoon. She ventured into her living room and saw the faint glow again, this time near the end of the block. She wanted to investigate, but each time she mustered her courage, a rough wave of vertigo surged through her. She crouched against the wall, clutching her temples, feeling compelled to stay hidden. When the dizziness subsided, she tugged at the blinds to peek once more, but the glow was gone. Left behind was a faint whisper in her mind, urging her not to trust her neighbors. She swore she heard a voice echo in her head. "They are out to get you. They are not who they say they are." She looked away and squeezed her eyes shut. The voice refused to leave. That evening, Dr. Fine decided he couldn't stand on the sidelines anymore. Something was forcing the residents of this block into isolation and fear, and he needed answers. He resolved to gather as many neighbors as possible in his living room and address the wave of paranoia head-on. The news spread. At 8 o'clock they would meet. Over half the residents came, though many only attended because they were mortally afraid not to know what might be said behind their backs. Nervous hush ensued as people sat on Dr. Fine's antique chairs and couches. Most of them kept glancing at the windows, as though bracing for a lurking threat. The overhead light flickered repeatedly, but no one mentioned it. By then, they were so used to abnormal signals, it barely warranted comment. "Let's be calm," Dr. Fine began, standing at the center of the room. His voice had a calming cadence. "We've all been feeling something here. Something none of us can explain. Whatever it is, we need to come together instead of suspecting one another." He paused, scanning their faces. Every set of eyes stared back, lines of exhaustion etched deep. A subdued murmur of agreement traveled around the room. "If we share our experiences, perhaps we can stay rational." "Fear feeds on isolation," Manny snorted, arms crossed. "I'm not scared of anything except that alien orb that's controlling people's minds. I saw it. It was outside last night, the same green glow." His eyes landed on Connie. "And I know I'm not the only one who saw it." Connie glanced around, swallowing hard. "I did see something glowing," she admitted, drawing a sudden wave of murmurs. "But maybe it was just a trick of the light. I'm not sure. Marcia stepped forward. "I found footprints. More like burn marks in the street. It's like something scorched the pavement, then vanished. It looked Not of this world. One of the neighbors inhaled sharply, but Marcia pressed on. Ever since I got close to that spot, I feel like someone's watching me, even now. A hush fell. The overhead light flickered once more, momentarily bathing them in darkness. The group stilled. Suddenly, the air felt electric, as though a thunderstorm was raging inside the house. In that fleeting darkness, many reported glimpsing shapes behind the windows, flickers of movement in the corners of their vision. When the lights came back on, everyone looked at one another, wide-eyed and pale. Dr. Fine tried to continue facilitating conversation, but Manny burst in again, voice trembling. "We should get out of here." He squeezed the gun, which was tucked into the waistband of his jeans, as if it were a talisman. "It's not safe. None of us are safe." "If we leave," Marcia said softly, "it won't help. What if this is in us, not outside? Running could just spread it further." No one had an immediate answer, they murmured, each mind leaping to terrifying conclusions. Some were sure it was just mass hysteria, others insisted it was genuine alien contact. In the confusion, Dr. Fine felt a piercing headache return. His vision blurred, and the living room spun, voices echoing as if underwater. He heard a sizzling ring in his ears, followed by a voice, soft but commanding. "They are your enemies. They will betray you. Stop them now." Terrified that he was succumbing to the same delirium, Dr. Fine forced himself to take a breath. The voice receded, but a residue of tension remained, pulsating at the edges of his consciousness. Meanwhile, Manny's trembling finger drifted toward his gun, though he hadn't drawn it. Lucy grabbed Manny's arm, trying to calm him. "We have to think carefully," she insisted. "Don't do anything desperate." But Manny's eyes darted around wildly. He jerked his arm away. "You're one of them," he snapped. "You're all infected." He stormed off, throwing the door open and disappearing into the darkness. For a moment, no one moved. Then, the entire group realized how precarious things had become. Manny might not be the only neighbor ready to lash out. After Manny left, tension spiraled further. Half the group followed him, worried about what he might do. The remaining neighbors struggled to maintain composure. Marcia sat quietly, her face in her hands, battling her own sense of panic, while Connie tried to comfort her with little success. Dr. Fine watched them with mounting distress. It was as if, hour by hour, this foreign presence stoked the embers of distrust, intent on turning the block into a war zone. Determined not to surrender to fear, Dr. Fine announced he would gather tangible evidence. He left his own house and strode down the block with a small handheld camcorder, hoping to record the glow he had caught glimpses of. The street was eerily still, the breeze pressing leaves against the pavement in a brittle ceruse that felt accusatory. Heads peered from curtains, but no one dared step outside. He cast his gaze at the asphalt where Marcia claimed to see scorch marks. A faint discoloration shaped like ridges or tendrils marred the road's surface. It was too symmetrical to be a simple oil spill or tire tread. Dr. Fine recorded it, leaning close to highlight each swirl under the harsh glare of his flashlight. He felt it then, a sharp spike in the atmosphere. The hairs on his arms stood upright. Slowly standing, he scanned the darkness. His flashlight beam sliced through empty air, yet he sensed something just outside its reach. Images flickered in his mind. Manny brandishing a gun, Connie trembling at her mailbox, Marcia's terror-stricken face. Despite his training, he couldn't quell the fear slithering through him. Reason told him that the power of suggestion was strong in times of collective anxiety. But something else, something primal, insisted that another worldly force was indeed feeding on their fear like a leech, channeling it to create illusions and paranoid impulses. As Dr. Fine made his way back, he stumbled upon Manny, a lone figure on the sidewalk. Manny still gripped his gun. He stared at Dr. Fine with wild, dilated eyes. "Stay back," Manny rasped. "I know what you are." Manny let out a strained laugh, edged with hysteria. "This planet is under invasion. We have to do something. If you're not with me." He didn't have to finish. The gun was leveled at Dr. Fine. A long, suffocating pause followed as the two men locked eyes. Then Manny's arm began to shake. He blinked in confusion, as though wrestling with warring impulses. Finally, he lowered the weapon, tears pooling in his eyes. "I'm losing it," he whispered. "Everything in my head is jumbled. I keep hearing this voice telling me to kill or be killed." Dr. Fine took a slow step forward. "We'll figure this out," he said softly. He coaxed Manny to hand over the gun. A trembling Manny obliged, surrendering the steel with a whimper. "Wait at my house," Dr. Fine told him, trying to inject calm into his tone. "I'll come back soon." While Manny trudged away, Dr. Fine continued his investigation. He needed to find the epicenter of this presence. He followed a strange prickling in his temples, letting the sensation guide him wherever it was strongest. Eventually, he found himself at the vacant lot at the very end of the street. Overgrown weeds snaked around a sign that read, "For sale." The night air felt unnaturally cold here, and his breath misted in front of him. Then he saw it. The greenish orb, half hidden by tall grass, pulsing with a subtle rhythm. It was larger than he'd expected, about the size of a beach ball indeed, but with swirling wisps of light dancing across its surface. His heart pounded. Every fiber of his being urged him to run, yet he remained, enthralled by the thing. With quaking hands, he raised the camcorder to record. As the lens focused on the orb, it emitted a faint hum, and a wave of vertigo dropped him to his knees. Darkness rippled at the edge of his vision, and that voice returned, stronger than ever. "They will destroy you first! Strike!" He clutched his head, fighting to stand. His mind reeled with images of neighbors turning on each other, the entire block dissolving into chaos. The presence invaded again. "This is their nature," it hissed, stoking violence. Dr. Fine struggled to remain himself, to push out the intruder. He forced his eyes open, aiming the camcorder lens at the orb. Perhaps, he thought dimly, if he could capture proof, it might break the fever of fear. Summoning every ounce of willpower, he pressed the record button. The orb's glow flared bright, forming a halo in the viewfinder. He felt a searing pain behind his eyes, as though the camera were drawing the entity's wrath. With a final burst of desperation, he panned the camera around, capturing a fleeting stream of golden sparks trailing from the orb's underbelly, dancing at the boundary between reality and illusion. Then, as if awakened by stray neurons in his brain, the orb quivered and rose from the ground. In an instant, it shot upward in a blur of green light, leaving behind a swirl of disturbed weeds and a hush of nothingness. Dr. Fine collapsed on all fours, panting heavily, the camcorder still clutched in his grip. His mind felt shredded, the intruding presence wounding his senses but not fully possessing him. When he finally collected himself and staggered back to the main street, he discovered it in chaos. A wave of mass panic had seized the neighbors. Manny's earlier meltdown had ignited everyone's latent paranoia, and it spread like wildfire. Some huddled together, accusing each other of sabotage, while others carried blunt objects or kitchen knives, convinced they needed to protect themselves. The shouting grew to a deafening roar. Dr. Fine managed to catch Marcia's attention. She hurried over, her face slack with fatigue, her expression an awful blend of terror and relief. "I saw the orb," he gasped. He pressed the camera into her hands. "There's footage. We can prove it. Show them. Show them we're not infected. We're just influenced." Marcia glanced at the maddened chaos around them. Connie was screaming something about traitors. Lucy was sobbing, while Manny sat on the curb, head in his hands. Neighbors who had been civil just days before were glaring at each other with the wild hatred of cornered wolves. "How do we get them to listen?" Marcia asked, voice trembling. Dr. Fine grasped her arms. "We must gather them in one place and show them the footage. Maybe, if they see what's truly out there, they'll realize we're on the same side, that we've all been manipulated." It was easier said than done. They had to coax unwilling neighbors into Dr. Fine's living room. Many resisted, preferring to stay armed in their homes. Only when Dr. Fine went door to door, promising them proof of the real cause, did enough people follow him back. The scene was precarious. A dozen traumatized adults with wide, suspicious eyes, all jammed into a room, while Dr. Fine set up the camcorder to play the footage on his old television. Manny hovered by the door, refusing to come farther inside. But he listened. All at once, the images flickered on screen. Shaky night vision glimpses of the vacant lot, the swirling green orb, the shimmering sparks. Gasps filled the quiet. Some of them pressed hands to their mouths, tears in their eyes. The most vehement skeptics fell silent, confronted by undeniable proof. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Manny's voice cut through the hush. "So it's real," he said quietly. "We're not just crazy." Dr. Fine paused the footage on a still frame of the orb. "It manipulated us. It lives off our fear, turning us against each other. That's what you were feeling." He scanned their faces. "But it's gone now. I saw it shoot into the sky. There's no reason for us to remain enemies." For a moment, the only sound was quiet breathing and the faint ticking of a clock. Then Marcia took a trembling step forward. "This thing tried to make me believe everyone was out to get me. I nearly attacked Connie." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry," she whispered, turning to Connie. Connie's eyes brimmed with tears. "I'm sorry, too. I lashed out at Manny. She trailed off, searching for the words. "I was so scared." Slowly, as if waking from an awful spell, the neighbors began to murmur apologies and confessionals. Weapons were laid aside, tears were shed, and anxious hearts allowed themselves a small measure of relief. It was not a total healing, for trauma lingered in every trembling hand and shallow breath. But a measure of unity formed at last. Dr. Fine told them how the orb seemed to vanish into the sky, and several neighbors stepped outside to verify. Indeed, the night seemed calmer now, less oppressive. The hush that enveloped them was no longer predatory. It was simply nighttime's natural stillness. Another day passed, and though the block was still haunted by memories of those 3 nights of terror, the tension gradually receded. Wounds remained, but there was also renewed compassion. Manny officially apologized to everyone at a small, impromptu gathering in Connie's driveway. Neighbors who had threatened each other's lives exchanged regretful, tight embraces. They all recognized a solemn bond. They had collectively survived something extraordinary, and they shared a sense of vulnerability in the aftermath. Still, an unease remained. No one could forget that the sphere had left as smoothly as it arrived. Where it had come from, or where it went, no one could say. And whether it might return was a question that hovered in the back of every mind. Some nights, shadows around the streetlights would make them flinch, recalling the green shimmer of an unearthly presence. Where once the block was carefree, it now lay steeped in caution, its residents far less trusting of the unknown. Yet a curious sense of gratitude also blossomed, that they were able to collectively refuse the final push into violence. For Dr. Fine, the experience carried a dual weight. As a psychologist, he regularly dealt with people's inner darkness, but never had he encountered such a tangible, otherworldly dimension to mass paranoia. He kept the camcorder footage secured, watching it from time to time with a sense of awe and dread. He wondered if the orb was a living being, collecting data on how fear corrodes communal bonds. Or perhaps it was a stray cosmic phenomenon, ignorant of the havoc it wreaked. Regardless, it left behind a neighborhood trembling at the edge of trust, uncertain but resolute in their decision to stand together. Weeks later, life on the block had regained a semblance of normalcy. Cars came and went, joggers took their morning runs, children ventured out on their bikes again. People tried to move on, trusting that the terror was behind them. Yet no one quite forgot. Hidden beneath everyday smiles and cheery greetings was the dim awareness that they had narrowly escaped the brink of something irreversible. Sometimes at night, Manny would lounge in his backyard, scanning the sky for flashes of green. Connie spent more time with Marcia, forging a stronger friendship from their shared horror. Dr. Fine consulted with them, encouraging group meetings to talk out fears, ensuring that the block didn't slide back into isolation. They were determined not to let paranoia triumph again, for they had learned a vital truth: the greatest weapon of any alien presence, see it cosmic or psychological, was the fear that turned neighbors into enemies. And if they stood together, they might hold on to a fragile but precious unity. Even if that foreign object from space ever came back, they were ready to confront it with vigilance and solidarity. refusing to be pawns to an unseen manipulator. Together they had stared madness in the face and, in the end, learned something about the formidable power of community and trust.